And we're on.
Welcome, everyone, to an all new, exciting episode of Talking From. We are going to be highlighting the premiere of season 2 of From with some really interesting updates. I am joined, as always, by my phenomenal co host, Kinte. Kinte, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, and I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you about this show.
Me too. I will say that although most shows take, at least a year to kind of come back, I have been anticipating the episodic return of From. It feels like ever since basically they stopped airing the last episode. So
Mhm.
I was really excited to see the show come back. I want to
I'll
first
be
kind of.
honest, I didn't think it was coming back because it didn't seem like it was getting a big push. And then all of a sudden, I mean, they said they were renewing it, so I said, "Oh, cool." I was happy about that.
I kind of had an idea that they probably would because they had invested already quite a bit in the in what was happening. But I mean, of course, until a show is actually announced, you never know. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um. Uh, all right. I'm gonna sort of give everybody a chance to catch up just a bit. So the show that is From is, and we're just going to come right out and say it, it's a little bit like Lost. And they even will say, the showrunners will say, yeah, it has that feel to it. It's episodically mysterious. Each episode brings us a little bit of something that seems like it could be a part of the puzzle or maybe a brand new idea for a new puzzle. From is a place where the people show up inside of a town and they cannot leave. It's not that they can't physically walk places or drive in a car places, but eventually it all kind of circled back to the town. Now, interestingly, in the first season of From, we were exposed to not just the monsters that we know of, who are the monsters that come out at night, but we were also introduced to some really weird lore, like these far away trees that you can get into and they bring you to different destinations, talisman, which seem to protect the inside of any dwelling that you're in, and a bunch of other kind of interesting ideas. Clearly there's something both very supernatural and very, I guess, otherworldly happening here. I'm going to get into some of the maybe a little bit odd things that were said in the first episode. And I'm going to ask Kinte about what he thinks about some of this. And I just want to say right off the top, although they keep alluding to everything being part of a dream, I really don't think that that's what's going on. I think that that is a very clear red herring. So, for anyone who tunes in and says, "Oh man, are they going to do a Lost on us?" No, I don't think that they are. I think they have learned the lesson pretty well. So, without further ado, let's get into episode 1 of season 2 from From. First, Kente, what were your overall what did you overall think about it, and also how did you feel about the busload of people that show up, because we know that they showed up at the end of the last episode of season 1. What did you think about that piece coming forward into season 2?
I thought it was great. I mean, they needed some new fodder, people to to get
Terrorize.
right. So, and then just new blood, period. And I thought it was handled quite well. So I thought they did a great job of continuation from the last season. And I have to say that the pacing of this season so far, in we're 3 episodes in, I think is way better, and it moves a lot better. So I got to give the writers a lot of credit. And once again, going back to the Lost connection, we know that the writers and some of the and Jack Bender, who was one of the top directors who directed the I believe this episode and the second episode, was the top director from Lost, as well as the writers worked a lot of the writers worked on Lost, and the name of this episode is called Strangers in a Strange Land, which is famously a name of a season 3 Lost episode.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's one of the worst Lost episodes of all time, which I thought it was interesting that, and it's seen as one of the worst episodes. It's that tattoo episode. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
that one,
right.
where you find
Yes.
out why Jack got his tattoo. It's
Yeah.
horrible, but I don't know if, but this is so much better than that episode, and I love Lost. So I wonder why they purposely named it this. I mean, anyone who loves both shows will definitely know the connection. You know.
Well, I'm gonna, just furthering along with this sort of idea with the connections here. I'm gonna say that what I find so compelling about From that I not necessarily didn't find compelling about Lost, but is just very different, is we're focused on a place that seems to have its own quote unquote ecosystem, like its own supernatural ecosystem. And that to me is a huge departure from Lost in the sense that we're less focused on each individual character's backstory and more focused on what's going on in this place. So the place seems to take a little bit of a higher position other than rather than just having individual people. Now, at the end of season 1, we had this huge disruption where the monsters basically got into Colony House, right? And so a lot of people died. And the current running headcanon for me is the busload of people had to show up because so many people died at Colony House. So they have to somehow keep replenishing the number of people that are around. Why that is, I don't know, but that seems to be fitting. But at the beginning of this season, we have somebody who is very similar to Boyd's wife, who is on the bus and and what we see in sort of a flashback is that they sense that there is something wrong here, that they saw this in a dream, and that's why I keep bringing that back up. And that character ends up being a pretty important, I think, character overall for us to understand what's going on. So the bus comes into town, and as the bus is coming into town, of course, they end up stopping at the diner. When they stop at the diner, yeah, it gets a little bit confusing. And eventually they are forced to stay. And as they are forced to stay, other things begin to happen. And I'm going to ask you, Kinte, tell me just the dynamic of the bus. We'll get into the house in a second, but just the dynamic of the people on the bus. What do you think of those people?
It's kind of, a lot of typical TV show type characters. The one guy with the very short hair, who's very hot headed.
Right?
He seemed like a character we've seen in a lot of different programs. Um, the uh, the black guy who has the premonitions seems very similar to stuff. The older couple, and then the bus driver who, I know a lot of people probably would criticize the bus driver, but from her stand-up, her point of view, I can understand why she is doing what she's doing. I mean, think about how crazy it's, and we know, because we're an audience, we know that they're telling the truth. But if I
Right.
was her, I probably would have this similar reaction, like, these people are crazy, let me get out of here.
Right, right. Uh, well, okay, so the one thing that I keep thinking about from the bus trip, which of course I feel like everybody should be talking about, is the fact that you have um, a situation where there's a personal connection between two of the characters, and that
Very lost
feels,
in.
yeah, right? Like that actually feels a little bit bizarre, like
Hmm.
very bizarre. But then there's also this sort of aspect which is like nothing feels like it is not on purpose. Everything feels like it's being done for a reason, but at the same time that we think everything's being done for a reason, not everything can possibly tie together. You know what I mean?
Right.
So obviously things are not necessarily all going to cinch up perfectly. So we know that Boyd and Tabitha, who are who well, Boyd and Tabitha were basically both off on their own journeys. We'll get into Boyd's first. So Boyd was off on a journey with Sarah, and they both went into a faraway tree. And Boyd ends up at the bottom of a well. And when he comes up from the bottom of the well after asking for help, which, yeah, let's get into figure out what the heck is up with that, somebody throws him a rope, but when he gets up to the top, there's a person that's chained to the wall. And that person that is chained to the wall clearly didn't or wasn't able to throw him a rope. I don't know how that actually happened. But he has a conversation with him and says, "No, I'm going to get you out of here." No, that doesn't happen. What did you think about that whole scene? Because I think that that was actually like a major story beat right there. I mean, other than just when the guy bites him, there's something about what just happened there that feels like a major story beat to me. What did you think?
I mean, I thought the scene was very creepy,
It
and
was crazy.
yeah, I mean, it was very effective in that way, in setting the tone. But it doesn't really answer any questions. It definitely poses more questions,
Right.
and a lot of it is towards his psyche is like, is this real? Is this a dream, like you said? Is this is he going mad? Or is all of this happening in his own head? Which is something that he's questioning himself. Is this really even happening? Any of it?
Right. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Keep going.
Oh, no, no. I was just saying that's what I took out of it.
I think the fact that he knew Abby is like the reason that I think it's a major story beat is because I'm not convinced that the faraway trees are not some kind. I don't know if they're actually like, oh yeah, we're getting teleported from place to place, or whether there's something else about them that maybe is at work. And I'll tell you, when Boyd left the well house, and all of a sudden then it wasn't there behind him,
Hmm.
I was immediately reminded of the way that most people handle dream sequences, where you are in one place and then, even though there's the thread of continuity, when you look around, you're not in the same place that you were. And I feel like that is kind of a clue about what we may be experiencing. And this guy that was chained to the wall even said, "Hey, maybe Abby was right and it's all just a dream."
Hmm.
Remember? Like that, didn't that seem a little bit like telling to you? I don't know, what'd you take from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to mess up his mind. And I mean, obviously, none of us wants that to be the thing. So, but I think they're throwing that out there because a lot of people are thinking that's probably what it is. So,
Right.
but I don't think that it's necessarily the truth.
There's also this idea that if you convince people that they are if you can convince people that they are not lucidly dreaming, that they can't actually affect any change in their environment. And
Hmm.
so, I watched a show on Netflix a while ago that was what was it called, 1899, where there was all these crazy things happening and it just sort of defied explanation. And at the end, it turns out that these people were in a kind of suspended animation, a kind of stasis.
Hmm.
And whatever they were experiencing collectively, but they were all basically in a dreamlike state. So I don't know if that's really what's happening, but it certainly seems like we've got a lot to draw on from there. Um, okay, so let's talk about. I guess let's talk about Tabitha for a second. So Tabitha
Okay.
goes off with Victor, right? Because Victor finds her underneath the house, and he says, you got to keep walking because the monsters are going to wake up. Oh my god, that was super tense.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know what it is about subterranean monsters that is like so freaky, but man, that whole scene was crazy tense, right?
Yeah. Subterranean. Yeah.
Uh,
That's
uh,
funny. Subterranean monsters.
it
That's a
was
whole genre in
creepy.
itself.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
it was. And you kind of you get the feeling that it's like, okay, well, are they like vampire-ish because they don't appear during the day?
Right.
Um, and they're living underneath the ground. Like, what's going on with that? That seemed pretty strange as well.
Uh-huh. Sorry.
Um, but
Mhm.
but Victor and Tabitha are, on this sort of walkabout, and they get to a place where they're out, and Victor brings both of them to some hideaway that he has. And I also I feel like this really tells us a lot about Victor, because Victor has been in this place for so long that he has all of these special places. Um, and we don't even know what the extent of all that is, but clearly this is a place that he's been to a lot. So he's needed to have refuge quite a bit. And they eventually the group meets up with Boyd, and then is his name no, his name isn't Ellis. What is his name? What is the man, my brain is not firing on all cylinders here, but the person who shows up on the bus about that has the dream
Elgin.
is his Elgin. Thank you, not Ellis, Elgin. Okay, so Elgin eventually shows up and tells them all about what has been happening back in the town. Now, back in the town, we know that Jim has been was in the house looking for Tabitha when the house basically collapsed in on itself.
Hmm.
Um, and did that feel supernatural to you? That didn't feel like, oh, the house just fell apart, right?
Oh no, yeah, no, yeah. It felt like, yeah, I didn't think of it as supernatural. I just felt like that's what was about to happen.
I'm going to circle back to one thing. I just want to mention one quick thing. Remember the guy in the well house? One of the things
Uh-huh.
that he says is, "Oh, haha," as if provincially. Haha. You think those monsters are just like they're just the tip of the iceberg.
I know, crazy, huh?
That I mean, that whole scene felt very, like I said, it seemed like a giant story beat, but that to me felt pretty important. Like, oh yeah, those are just the minions or something. I don't know. That felt really weird. And before I forget, let's not sort of pass over the fact that when that guy that is chained up bites Boyd, Boyd is infected with something. Some kind of thing that is now traveling underneath his skin.
I
I
know,
mean, they look
gross.
like little eels, yeah?
Yeah, gross too. Yeah.
Man, that's pretty freaky. I don't know what the heck is going on with that, but I'm hoping that that's not what we know. Remember, we know that Sarah has some kind of like direct connection to something because it writes on her arm, and I'm wondering if maybe that's sort of like a like there's like that's another kind of connection. I don't know. Um, but obviously Boyd doesn't want to tell anybody that that's what's going on, so he hides it pretty well. Okay, so let's get to the house. So Jim is in the house when it collapses, and as the house collapses, there's people that were trying to help him, and they can't get out. So everybody's stuck in the house, and it's going to be nightfall. And so the house is directly across the street from the diner, and of course, in the diner is Julie, who's Jim's daughter, and she can't do anything. She's just stuck there. She's just got to watch whatever is happening. Um, what'd you think about that whole thing?
Say that one more time because you kind of cut out for me.
So the when the house collapses and it's getting to be nightfall, Julie is right there. She has to retreat to the diner. She doesn't want to leave him, and then all she can do is basically watch what's happening overnight,
Hmm.
knowing that her dad is underneath this house with no protection. What'd you think about that whole thing?
No, I thought that was well. For one, was it was great because the concern she had for her father, because she in the last season she kind of rebelled against her parents, and
Right,
it was good. It was, I guess, it was growth on their relationship.
right, right,
So no, I thought that was really good because this kind of establishes that she really does care about her parents. I'm not to say that I didn't think she didn't care about her parents, but um, it took that moment to, for the audience to really see that, oh, she cares and she really wants to, protect her father, and it was very admirable that she wanted to do that, even though it didn't make sense, as far as. But it's an emotional decision because it's an emotional thing.
Right, and the fact that also now we know that that Ethan was further away from everybody, um, and hanging out basically with Jade, who, and then they go ransack Victor's room and stuff. But in the
Mhm.
meantime, all of these high stakes things are happening in the diner. Nobody in the diner who is from the bus believes that there are monsters, and it takes basically a bunch of killing for the people that are in the diner to even begin to fathom what's really going on. Um, I gotta say that the whole first episode, and tell me what you think, but I think this whole first episode really sort of played really well into both raising the stakes for everyone and also deepening the level of mystery to the town without adding so many new layers that we can't keep track of them all. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I thought that. I mean, once again, I think that it was extremely well done. It was um, because I think this show really needed it. It
Yeah.
really needed to do that, to take this show to the next level. So I would definitely say that, yeah, that was good, very well
Well,
done.
we had in the last season, in season 1, we had a lot of groundwork being laid, I think, to both endear us or give us a sense of agency with each individual character. So we needed to have some background information. And we got a deepening level of mystery surrounding the town and what is out and around the town that is what is out there, because we talked a little bit in our last podcast that we did for From about Boyd and Sarah discovering the spiders, and then Boyd seeing Abby and the lighthouse and things that just sort of stand out as, okay, this is just a crazy, um there's so many things coming all together at one time that it's impossible for us to make any headway in what may or may not be happening. And so the way that I feel like they're doing this, which I think is absolutely perfect, is by giving us individual journeys to go on with all of these different characters. But I think that the first season needed to make us want to care about them. Like, why would we care about Fatima and Ellis if we didn't have some feeling for what they were going with? I mean, in the very next episode, when Ellis, uh, well, in the very next episode, when the two of them sort of have their moment of crisis, uh, the stakes have to be very high for them in order for us to care. Otherwise, it will just feel like, well, yeah, all these things are happening, but why do we care? Do you know what I mean?
Right? Yeah. No. Yeah. Makes, yeah, perfect sense. Yeah.
Because I kind of felt like that in the very first episode with the girl who lets in the monster, who's tapping at the window going, "But it's your
Oh, don't get me
grandma."
started on her.
Right? And like, I mean, not that that wasn't a really shocking scene, because of course it was, but did I really care about the little girl? No, because I
No.
didn't know her. Right? But now I know everybody. I know Tabitha. I know Jim. I know Victor. I know Boyd. I know Jade. I know Donna. I know Kenny. I know Kristi. I know Fatima. I know Ellis. I know Julie. I know Sarah. And I know all these people, and Ethan. I know all these people. There's so many of them, but they all matter. Like, if you ask about each and every one of these people, they all make a difference. Let's talk a little bit about Donna. I gotta say, Donna really stepped up in the first two episodes as being just such a badass. What were your impressions of how Donna treated or reacted to the people from the bus, getting them into the diner, and then subsequently keeping everybody in the diner, even though they were like, "We got to get out there."
Well, you got to remember that everybody was coming off a traumatic experience, so really
That's
they
right.
didn't have time to pussyfoot around. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, and then they were running out of time too. So it was pretty much like, you know what? Let's just get this done. Like, and I'm about to
Right.
shoot out the window. Shoot out
The bus tires.
bus tires, yeah, and and I'm sure to those people she looked crazy, but eventually she knew that it was going to be proven that she was in fact telling the truth.
I love this duality between Donna and Boyd, where it should be Kenny that's really picking up the slack and doing the stuff that Boyd would be doing, but Kenny kind of takes a back seat to Donna, and Donna really steps up and becomes the quote unquote sheriff. Um, in Boyd's absence. And I thought that that was really, it was a good choice because Donna is the strongest, I think, of anybody in this
Hmm.
town so far,
Right. No,
which
yeah, no.
is, yeah, that's kind of amazing. I mean, I feel like it's kind of, and I feel like the reason that it sort of works in parallel sequence with or parallel connection with Boyd is because both Donna and Boyd have lost someone very dear to them in the town, and the personal connections that the two of them make over that, the shared trauma bonding, is really powerful. They understand what's at stake, so it felt really good. I don't know, I just really liked it.
Yeah, me too.
um all right, so let's talk a little bit about some of the things that then we go on to find out later. I well, you tell me, what stands out to you as one of the biggest episodic reveals of the first two episodes?
Um, well, obviously the bite.
Right.
Um, also, Jade. I like the piece about Jade and Vic, going in Victor's room, and that was cool.
Yeah,
And
discovering more of
and
the
of course the
symbols.
main thing is love has come home. you know, uh,
Right.
that and poor guy. He's just got to deal with it.
Yeah,
But
you mean Kenny?
Kenny, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I think I felt really bad for him. He loves Kristi so much.
Yeah, and he handled it pretty well as you could. He just he seemed to just accept it. He didn't really fight it or anything. He just was like, okay, this is what it is.
I think it feels a little bit weird in some ways um because there's this idea that I think all of us kind of had at the end of season 1 that, you know, maybe there's some hope for people even though they're in the middle of this major crisis. And I got to say that this is one of the reasons I'm very concerned about Ellis and Fatima, because that feels a little bit too happy in a time of absolute chaos. And I don't know how that's gonna end. I don't know. What do you think about it? I mean, I love that. I love the idea that the two of them are so close, but I also sort of feel like anytime anybody gets close in this town, it turns upside down.
Right. Um. So you think it's gonna turn bad, huh?
I I I mean, I wish I could say that I
I
didn't,
didn't
but
even think
everything.
about that. I guess you know what. I mean, it does have. I guess it does have that as a potential. Of man. I That's pretty good. I didn't even think about that. That they could actually. I mean, but he just seems like the kind of person that would just accept it personally. That's what I don't know. I just feel like I just felt like he was like, well, that's what it is, like
Right, right.
I can't do anything about it. He didn't try to to fight it at all. He actually handled it pretty because if you think
Oh wait,
about it, it's not like
Are
there's a
you
whole.
are you
uh
talking about Kenny? Because I'm talking about Fatima and Ellis.
Oh, I'm sorry, Fatima. Oh, okay, we got off of that. Okay, I apologize. No, oh no, 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 no. Fatima and Ellis. Oh yeah, that's going bad.
Yeah, right? I mean,
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is she is losing it, and he's doing his best to try to
keep it together.
keep it together with her or for her or whatever. But no, I don't see. Yeah, that's not gonna end well.
I kind of think you might be right too.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like there just isn't a really good there's no th- it's really I think that one of the things that keeps, and I don't know what this is, what they're trying to say. I mean, from any standpoint, no matter what I'm putting out here, it's all just conjecture, but it does sort of feel like the town itself tries to somehow isolate people, isolate them either mentally or isolate them physically. And the moment that you make connections, that's when you're vulnerable enough for something to happen. And so it happened with Donna, it happened with Boyd, it happened with Ellis because that Abby was his mom.
Right.
Like it continues to sort of follow this pattern. It even happened to Sarah because she loses her brother,
Mm-hmm.
in the most ridiculous way ever. Sarah,
Right.
goofball. Um, and we'll get to Sarah in our next podcast because we're going to talk about episode 3. But as we sort of like move into what I think personally, as we move into what we are now expecting from episode 1 and episode 2, the number of things that we have discovered are still sort of hanging out there, but we have discovered some new things. We knew from season 1 that there is some bigger entity sort of, and maybe not controlling but communicating, because the radio tower did work
Mm-hmm.
and they did contact somebody, but then the huge storm happened. And as the huge storm happens, it basically obliterates everything. No, why? That is, I think, kind of a big question. And then on top of that, as we discover sort of what's happening here into season 2, we know that there is electricity, but the electricity doesn't go anywhere. That Tabitha's big discovery was the wires aren't connected. We don't there's no reason for electricity to be working. Um, we also discover little bits and pieces about things, as I said, being subterranean or things being completely disconnected from the outside world, like the well house, like being in the underground caverns or places like that, right? So we know that there's those things happening. And then on sort of as the biggest maybe discovery layer were all of Boyd's revelations in the well house with, hey, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are some kind of weird worms traveling around in his body.
Oh, geez.
Um,
Yeah.
and that, and that, what was the other thing that he said that I was just thinking about? That, 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 that the overall part of being in danger here almost has nothing to do with the monsters that they think they're keeping themselves safe from. Because Boyd thinks it's such a huge deal that there's talisman now, and so, hey, we can keep you safe. And the guy in the well house was like, oh, that's funny. You think that that's going to keep you safe? Because clearly, no, that's not going to keep you safe.
Right.
Um, but other than that, we have sort of settled into a pattern of, okay, we're not learning quite so much about the town as much as we're learning about the things that we've already kind of made the discovery for. Like, we know that the symbols mean something, those symbols that Victor was collecting in his notebooks, and that we also saw in the diner store, right, in the storage
Right.
area. Things like that, which we still don't know what those mean. Maybe those are talisman. Do we know? I
I
don't think
have
we've
no
got. Yeah, we haven't gotten anything with that, have we?
no, no, not at all. So yeah,
Um,
yeah, this is another clue that we
Uh,
gotta
right?
read through. Yeah.
And then at the between episode 1 and episode 2, we have all of these new characters that we kind of get to know. Some of them we sadly have to say goodbye to almost as soon as we meet them.
Hmm.
RIP to the elderly couple on the bus.
Oh yeah, that
um
was cold.
that was cold. I like Mr. Smiley though, as he sat down on the bus and he pretended to drive. Like
Mm.
that was actually pretty funny. I thought that was pretty cool. Like he's gonna go someplace or something. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um, and we also had the couple that we will discuss in the next podcast as well, who are basically, oh hey, let's just see if this person really needs help, and they open the door, and yeah, no, that wasn't a good idea for them. And a couple of other people that we know died because they were out in the open and weren't protected in any way. There were also the two people underneath the house. Only Jim survived underneath the house, right?
Right. Yeah.
So there's that too. All of those
Lucky
things
Jim, huh?
together. Yeah, lucky Jim.
Hmm.
Uh, it's almost like he has main character syndrome. I don't know
Yeah,
what
I
it
know, right? The one character we actually cared about. Well, I liked the bartender. I thought it meant okay. Can we talk about something real quick before we say
is.
goodbye to
Yeah,
this episode?
let's go.
Father, the priest. What was his name? Father
Father Kotri.
Patrick.
Yeah,
Don't you feel like they shouldn't have killed him off? The show needs him in a way.
kind of. Yeah,
I like the well. I guess we're talking. The third episode really made me go. We need him. Like I felt like his character, and he was first of all the actor is great, and he did a fine job. But I just felt like that character, the show kind of needed it. I think once he left, the show kind of was missing something. You know what I mean?
mm.
That he was providing. So not to say that the show isn't still good, but I just feel like his character, the show could use his character.
Well, there's no at this point. There's no either inspired or uninspired, because we know that Father Kotri is not, who he thinks he was or who he said he was.
Hmm.
But there's no spiritual center for any of these people. And that I do think is something that everybody sort of gravitates toward during times of trauma and chaos. You're even if you're not okay, I'm Christian and believe in a Christian God, you're always looking for some kind of spiritual center to bring you back to hope and belief. And, things could be better than they are. And right now, no one has that.
Right.
And I think that that was what was embodied with Father Kotri. So yeah, I think that that is kind of missing. I'm before again, but before we say goodbye to this episode, I do want to just sort of ask you, because I do think that this is important. Of all of the things that are happening right now in episode 1 and episode 2,
Hmm.
what do you think is like the most important part of what we're supposed to be paying attention to?
I think Boyd,
Yeah,
his journey, which is almost like it's being. I think people see it as a failed journey, but I think a lot happened that we'll realize later in that
yeah.
in his adventure. You know. So I tell you though, when he was in the woods and they were walking by, that was very tense. Even though I felt like there was nothing going to happen to him, it still was very tense though.
Let me ask you a quick question about this. And again, this is just pure conjecture on my part, but do you think that those things, whatever they are, in his arm, in his whatever, do you think that they may be some kind of protection?
I didn't even think about it like that.
Or that
Possibly.
maybe they can't see him because he has those? There's a
Oh,
part
that he was giving him some sort of help.
yeah, remember he
That's
said, "Well, I
interesting.
I passed this on." The guy in the well house says, "Okay, I've passed this on." Right?
Mm,
And I mean, there's a reason that he was chained in the well house.
right.
But what, but we don't know whether he was chained in the well house by someone nefarious trying to keep the protection away from everybody else, or whether he was chained in the well house because whatever he had made him somehow uh you know like more okay, we have to keep you now, not because it had anything to do with protection, but because, oh yeah, there's something about this that's important to the monsters. You know what I'm saying? Like, it kind of feels to me like maybe that was the point behind having Boyd hide behind a tree and not being seen by the monsters as they were passing by, because we know that that's one of the things that they're really good at, is finding people even when they think they're hiding.
Ah,
Remember, because they were saying that, like, they had to hide underground when they first got there, and if you were out in the open you were basically just going to be fodder, because anybody that was in the open that wasn't hiding really well, they could find them.
right, right, yeah.
I don't
Huh.
know, just a thought, but I feel like maybe that scene was supposed to say, "Hey, whatever's going on with Boyd, yeah, it's probably something that's making him a little bit less visible to monsters." I don't know. I guess we'll find out, but
Yeah, we'll find out.
it was
All
an
right.
idea.
So let's how can well they can get me at Kinte F on Twitter, and also they can get me at um Kinte Ferguson on Instagram. How can they get you?
People can find me at my website, moviesandmeals.com. You can also join me for my other podcasts, which I do with Wadco Media. Please join me. We have a great time. I thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We're going to launch right into our next episode, where we're going to talk about episode 3 of season 2, From. And I hope you'll join us. This has been great. Kinte, thank you so much for being an awesome podcast co host. I love this. This is great. So we'll see you next time.
Peace.